Hey everybody, this is Brent from The Second Look. Today I have the pleasure of talking with Cassidy Civiero. Cassidy, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me, Brett.
Of course, thank you for taking the time. I'm very excited to talk to you. I want to talk about all things related to you and your work. So the best place to start is always the beginning. What was the thing, the moment, the film, the experience that got you into filmmaking?
I always like to say that the movie that made me a filmmaker was this movie called Cube from 1997 by from director Vincenzo Natali. And when I was 13 or 14, this is a Canadian film and I'm Canadian. And this movie played on the TV so frequently, at least weekly, but very, very frequently, very late at night after like midnight, 1 a.m. And the amount of times that I stayed up watching Cube and then having to go to school like 5 hours later is just actually nuts. And I watch this movie still every year. I watched it on Christmas Eve most recently. So that's just a really important movie for me. And I think at the time it was something so unlike anything I'd ever seen. I think that's the draw at that time before I really knew anything about film. But now as a director, I think my sensibility and my style, it makes very much sense that that was the movie that kind of began it all.
Interesting. All right. I've never seen Cube. It's been on the video shelf, when I was back then, I guess, when it was on video and I was working it. I was at a video store and I would see it on the shelf. It looked interesting. I've heard things about it and somehow never got around to it. But now I'm convinced it's time to finally take the plunge on Cube. And but no, that's interesting because I did want to ask you about your influences because I watched I think three of your films on YouTube and they all have a very strong style, very strong aesthetic point of view, that kind of thing. So Cube clearly is a formative template for that. Anything else? Any other influences?
I think definitely he's a controversial guy for sure, but Lars von Trier, a lot of his work I love a lot. Josephine Decker, who's an experimental filmmaker who's made a couple movies that I really love. Yeah, just people who play with experimental techniques like Lynn Ramsey doing We Need to Talk About Kevin. This is another movie that I first saw when it first came out and I was maybe like 19 or 18 and I'm 32 now. And again, I wasn't a filmmaker at the time, but there's something that drew me to it. And now when I watch that movie, I'm like, oh, this movie, it has this narrative, but it's using so much experimental visual storytelling. Uh, and I think all of those nonverbal hedging on experimental moments are the thing that really started to inform my voice as an artist, where I've done a lot of, if you've seen some of my films, I have a lot of stuff that's no dialogue, one character, kind of a bit of magic realism. So that's definitely my style.
What movie was that?
Of my films,
No, no, sorry, the one that you were just talking about that you.
we need to talk about Kevin.
Oh, okay, right, right, yeah. Yes. All right. I'm putting the pieces together now. I'm seeing it. It's interesting because I guess the more there's a straight process for just a straight narrative, this scene then this scene, that in character arcs and like the kind of the traditional path for a film. But the more you stray from that, the more abstract or subjective it gets. How I'm curious because I feel like the further away you get, the more personal it gets, the more like it's just your process because you're not following necessarily, a template. I've made a couple very small, short experimental films, but I'm always curious about I guess the ideation process in those modes. How do you decide how far to go? How far away from, like what you're really saying versus what you're showing us and how much we have to connect the dots, like, is there I guess maybe what the simplest answer is like your process and how you just make those decisions.
Yeah, I think I make decisions very much based on what I feel in my body and what I want the audience to kind of feel in their body. So sometimes that will start with an image, like for my film Ethical Consumption, a person eating garbage. And that was kind of like, I used to walk around, and when I was doing nature walks, I would bring a little bag and I would pick up trash when I would go around. And sometimes I would see these trash bins on the trail that were absolutely overflowing with garbage. And I think I just started taking photos of these overflowing garbage bins kind of wherever I went, and I was picking up garbage myself. And I was like, where do I put my garbage that I'm picking up now? Like, and it was all of that garbage that really made me think about that. And I was like, ooh, a person eating garbage. And then that was almost the entire film. Like, I got a grant for that film. And I really do believe, and from talking to the people from that grant, it was that image that got me that grant. It's kind of like all it took was, I've never seen a person eating garbage. And it was a grant specifically about climate anxiety projects. And so it was almost like just a one-to-one translation. This makes me feel a certain way in my body. I know it's going to make the audience feel a certain way in their body that, you know, honestly could be a little bit triggering. You have to find that balance between triggering people and not, I think. But yeah, so it's about the body feelings for me.
Yeah. Okay. That makes total sense. You have a feeling in yourself, and trying to translate that for others. Sometimes in this case, it's a very direct connection. It's very easy to access that same feeling for the audience. And other times, maybe not. Maybe you have to kind of build up to that, or help them towards that more. I'm curious about that project specifically because you got a grant. You told them the idea first, right, to get the grant. And then were there any restrictions or anything, like how far you could go with it, or how disturbing or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, not really, but yes. So the answer is yes, no to that. Where if I'm about to say the spoiler for the film, so if you want to go watch this 3-minute film before you hear this, please go now, pause this, and then come back. But at the end of the film, she bites into a broken bottle, and I really wanted to have an overhead shot of she bites into the bottle and then like leans over, and then just like blood all over the table, and then like the title card in the blood. That was like my initial kind of thing. And they weren't like, you can't do that. But Chris Hyde, the executive director of Voices with Impact Festival, who was really guiding me through that grant and giving me notes throughout the process, was kind of like, how nihilistic do you need to be with this? More so, it's like, what is the gore going to do that we're not already doing? And he had a really good point. And honestly, I look at that film and I think, sorry if I'm not allowed to swear here, but I look at that film and I just go, damn, that might be the most nihilistic thing I have ever made and will ever make. And I'm glad that he pulled me back that bit, because I don't think it was necessary.
Mm.
But yeah, so I think he would have let me do it if I really, really wanted to. But what he said just really made sense to me.
Mm. Yeah, that's good. That's good. I do think it's important for any artist, I guess. Maybe I haven't thought this through before I'm saying it, but having somebody like that to give you an outside perspective from any angle, like, you know, if it's working for them, or if it's too much, or in this case, yeah, like thinking about it conceptually and what the effect is going to be, and what you're after, and if it's too much. I think that's very valuable to get that feedback from people. It sounds like that, as you're saying, it helped you as well. So I'm just trying to pull out these lessons for people, like to show their work to somebody. You know, it doesn't have to be some, like aggressive or antagonistic thing. And is this too much? But it's like, is this working? Is the emotion working? Is the story working? Like whatever your goal is, it might be perfectly fine in your head, but if it's not translating to people, then you have to make adjustments. Okay, I'm going to talk about the grant, because I think filmmakers need to know about that stuff, especially if if never done it. Walk us through that grant process.
Yeah, that grant specifically is near and dear to my heart. It's given through Art with Impact, and it's called the Voices with Impact Production Grant. And then they do a yearly festival where they screen all of the winners. And this is an international opportunity. So They're based in the States. Now they have a Canadian office, but anybody from around the world can submit to this grant. There's no restriction on that. And every year in August or September, they release 2 topic areas, and you have to apply specifically for projects that fit within those 2 topic areas related to mental health, typically, and sometimes physical health, I believe, as well. But sorry, I'm just going to kind of like try to get back on track and find an edit point for this. Yeah, so that grant is definitely one of the ones that's the closest to my heart. And it's this international grant that anybody in the world can apply to. And every year in August or September, they release 2 topic areas, and a film has to be within those 2 topic areas, and they're projects related to mental health. So you kind of have to wait until they release what the topic areas are in order to almost ideate a project to put in that. Like, it's not going to work for everything you ever dreamed of making. You're going to have to be kind of geared a bit specifically toward what those are. And then there are very little restrictions on it. They pick 10 teams a year, and it's a grant of 7,500 USD. And the one thing about it is that the funds, you find out in about November, the funds are released in December, January, and then you have to complete it by April so that it's ready to go for the festival in the spring. So it is kind of like you need to be able to completely produce the film within about 4 months.
Okay, that's good. I always appreciate those time constraints, because if you just let me do it on my own, it's going to take forever or not get done at all. Okay. And then so you put all that money towards the film. How was it working with that budget? Like, were you able to work towards the budget? Did you have to, scale back or anything?
So I produced the film myself, and that'll save you a lot of money if you don't have to pay a producer. And I was also the writer, the director, and I was never really intending on taking a rate. And then I think I had a surplus of maybe like $600. So I ended up being able to give myself $600 just from my budgeting skills, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, a lot of that gets eaten up by insurance and then just giving 10 people a day rate and feeding them. That's pretty much it. It is difficult to work within if you're trying to do something more narrative, I think, or something longer. Specifically for the Voices with Impact production grant that we're talking about, the films are 5 minutes or less, which I think really helps at the budget level. And I also, again, I'm not doing any dialogue. My script was, I think, 3 pages. I made sure to only shoot in 1 day. So I'm just giving everybody a fair day rate, not expecting not expecting everybody to come out for 3 or 4 days on 1 day rates. That's a good thing about the grant giving these topic areas as well, is like you're writing to the specification. So I would say 7,500 USD, which is what the grant was, is about 10,000 Canadian. And I don't think I would do something too much more ambitious than 1 shoot day with 1 actor at that rate.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's good. I think it's pretty smart to work to find, I guess, the scale and to plan ahead like you did to make sure you got the most out of it. And yeah, that's great. And what are you for your other projects? Are those self-funded? Are there other grants? How else do you work?
Yeah, for my film after ethical consumption, which is called Return to Nature, I got another grant that was 7,500 Canadian. At that, I almost treated it like the same budget level as when I had 10K. So I ended up going in the hole about 1,500 on that, but I still had a grant to pay for most of it, which was great. And then I also make a lot of little weird 3-minute experimental stuff that I make almost entirely myself, maybe with 1 or 2 people helping me out. So when I get an idea that I think is super feasible to do for $0, I'm basically, sometimes I just get a fever and I do it within like a week. And then I'm like, wow, that just happened. So I'm always making weird little films for $0, but I have been fortunate to get 3 grants for my films. So I've had a budget a few times so far.
Okay. Great. Yeah. I think the grant thing is, like I said before, like it's like a really important and available resource that people, I just don't hear about it enough, I think, from filmmakers who are trying to get something done, and they think they can't because they don't have $7,500, and it's right there, and it's not even a loan. It's just like money that is there to help you make your art, and there's no strings. Like there's no. Anyways, I just want to shout that out one more time. Yeah, I Return to Nature is one I watched. Can you? I don't know. I don't know how you feel about explaining things. So explain as much or as little as you want. But I'm just very curious about that film and kind of where it came from, and then what I think I know, or I have my own read on it. But you don't have to give me the real explanation. But just curious about that project.
Yeah, I think when I first started showing people that project, it was a very love-hate for some people. Some people really loved it, some people really hated it, of the maybe handful of people that I showed when it was picture locked. And I was like, what do you think of this? And then the people who loved it all had kind of their own theory about what it was about. Every single one of them, I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it was about. They gotta just like affirm, you just take credit for whatever storyline that they want to project onto it. Which I think that film, whereas Ethical Consumption was more direct, Return to Nature was a bit of an opportunity for someone to project their own experience onto it. And it kind of came from basically me living alone, and both Return to Nature and Ethical Consumption were shot where I live. It was really this kind of one-to-one translation of living alone and how you cannot be present in your own mind even when you're alone. Whether that's through anxiety, depression, rumination, whatever you want to project onto that, the film is really about a lack of presence and what presence can help you achieve in the end.
Wow, that's great. I mean, the isolation definitely comes through. That's a very strong element, and I think I'm forget. Was it "Ouch My Childhood"? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Me and my friend Cam just put that out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. I just watched that this morning. There's an isolation there too. So I just think that's a very strong component in your work, and I think you've got it. Like that's a thing. That's not a thing that is easy, I think, to just communicate, especially in a non-dialogue piece. Anyways, I just really like that aspect. So I think you've got that down. Yeah. You said something. Okay, the love-hate thing. No, you said people have an explanation, and you just kind of agree with that, whatever it is. I love that aspect of any art, because to me, that's the whole point. That's the whole idea, is to let somebody experience it on their own, to come up with their own interpretation, to let it affect them how it's going to affect them. If we all saw the same movie, we'd have nothing to talk about. Like there's nothing left there. It's like, okay, we ate the same meal, and then that's it. Okay, moving on. So I just really appreciate leaving it up to the viewer, giving them something to think about, leaving it up to them. It's a more profound experience that way. All right, let's talk about "Ouch My Childhood." What was the? I love the title. I love the. Did you do some color grading or something on this movie? Like, because the colors are.
Yeah,
insane.
I'm gonna send Cam this podcast after. I made this with one of my best friends, Cameron Kneedeman, and he and I have known each other since childhood, since grade 5. We've been friends for over 20 years. And this was the first thing we made together. And he wrote it and I directed. And I'm just laughing so much because that film just makes me laugh. And then also the color, my God, was like, I was texting him like 4 days in a row being like, I'm having a mental breakdown over this color. Like, because we did that just basically the two of us. And I hadn't shot in log, and then you couldn't just like put a LUT on it or whatever. It was like, and the colors were mismatched. And I really wanted this kind of bright color palette that was almost like reminiscent of childhood blocks, like primary colors, stuff like that. And so I did that myself in DaVinci. And there are 1 or 2 shots where I'm just like, I just couldn't get that one where I wanted. But if I ground any harder on it, I would have I was just on the edge of a nervous breakdown, and I was like, it's going to be what it is. So it's funny because the color was important to me, but I did it by myself and I've never done it before. So.
Well, okay, a couple of things about that. One is it totally works. It totally works in the film. So yeah, your first time out, I think you really nailed it, because there's kind of I don't know, primordial or something about how colors really, shape everything that we're seeing. I don't know, just it's always fascinating to me, like when there's one thing in a movie that you can tell if there was a slider, if you moved it over here or over here, like you have very different movies, is just that one little thing that you tweak, in either direction. And in here, the color that is that thing, and I think it really works. But tell me what you learned, I guess, about doing the color yourself, and how, what are you going to do next time with color?
God, I'll probably not do the color myself, but this is a podcast, so the people listening probably can't hear me or see me, but I'm just like cheering and stuff while Brent is saying this stuff, because that's exactly what I wanted to achieve, that kind of primordial thing, and I just wasn't sure if I had, so that's great. But yeah, you know what? What I learned is that editors and colorists are amazing human beings who know almost a completely different language. I feel the same way about computer coding. This is a whole different language, and I want to keep getting to a point where I can pay people to do these things because they're so amazing at them. And for this one, we just didn't have any money and I had to do it myself. But that's what I learned, is just like my skill level is like half a percentage of what is possible through DaVinci and other softwares. And you can watch a million YouTube tutorials that kind of start to build that basis. But, in terms of, there are so many faster ways to do it. There are so many better ways to do it. When I say better, I mean like ways that like you can go back and undo what you did and redo it in a better way. Sometimes because you don't know, you're messing up your entire workflow without even kind of realizing it. I also edited Ouch My Childhood, and I've edited a couple of my films. I don't like to have people with me on the edit, because you will see a side to me where it's like that comes out nowhere else in my life, where the agony, the pure agony. It's like doing my own production design. I do my own production design a lot. I have a set in my basement we're shooting a proof of concept and for a feature here in 4 days. And this was actually my chillest time, where I was just like, Cassie, you're not going to be building this set and be wanting to end it all. So anyway, I really got off track here to just say that my absolute dream is to just keep having funding and keep having more funding to pay professionals who dedicate their lives to these certain elements, because that's what filmmaking is. And the collaboration of filmmaking is my favorite part. And so the fact that I've had to do a lot of these elements myself, I learned some great skills, but they're not things that I want to do in the long term, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I guess the double-edged sword of filmmaking and the collaboration that is required is, one, you have to work with other people, and sometimes that's very difficult to do. Getting them aligned with you and what you want to do, and they're artists in their own right, and they, trying to, take ownership of their piece of it, and so kind of navigating that. But also on the optimist side of that is you get to work with a bunch of artists who, like you said, who are focused on that area. That's their thing. That's what they want to do, and they're going to give you their best work, and it's going to be better than, it's going to be better than what you could do. And I'm saying that to 99% of people. Maybe James Cameron is the exception or something. And that is a privilege, to be able to work with those people and have them contribute in that way. So that's interesting. But I think you've probably picked this up though. Now that's the thing you don't want to do, but you also tried your hand at it. You exerted some of your creative energies in that direction. You found, you worked something out, you did it. And that next time you'll be, when you're working with a colorist, let's say, you have that language. You're saying you have a language now that you can start to develop and share with that person that you may not have had if you hadn't done this one by yourself. So that's great. Okay. Now, I really want to talk about It's Really Dark Here Tonight. That was the first one I watched, and that blew me away. Like, that was like, I was like kind of frozen, kind of like still, just kind of letting, like, I didn't want to move because I don't know, like I was just kind of locked in immediately. So can you tell me about that project?
Yeah, I mean, talk about isolation, like we were
Yeah.
talking before. There's
Yeah.
one for you. Uh,
Yeah.
and that was purely almost unedited. I added some distortions, but in terms of the actual clip, which comprised of the whole film, it's not rearranged, it's not cut down. It's literally just a 7-minute voice memo that I took when in 2022 when I was in the depths of a really serious depressive episode. And I knew that I had this voice memo for a couple years.
Okay.
And I listened to it a time or two and I was like, God, like that is heavy. Like, and I thought about making something with it, but I just felt like almost irresponsible doing that because there were so many mentions of self-harm in it. Like I was just worried about it being too triggering for a long time.
Mm,
And also maybe I just didn't have a vision for it for all that time. And then
mm,
last spring, I just knew a couple people who one had a friend who took their own life, and one had a friend who was going through serious depression and asked me, they were like, I know that you've been through this. So do you have any kind of feeling about what I should say to them or what that's like for them? And then I was like, let me go listen to that voice memo just to try to get myself in the psychology of that. And then the whole thing kind of hit me like a truck. And that night I just took black ink and a paintbrush and I started drawing I was just listening to it over and over and over and over again while I was drawing all of the images of that movie. And then it
mm,
was almost like some weird Zodiac killer kind of like I like took a step back and then my desk is full of like 80 pages like all around my office drying in different states of drying because I did all those ink drawings and then I was like, "Oh my God." And then over the next 48 hours, I scanned them all in. I started to get like, I really wanted this kind of like burned into your retina vibe with these red images, just really capturing the dark hole that I was kind of in when I made the voice memo. And then when I got to the audio editing, that was one of the most exciting parts for me where I had a really wow moment where I took the actual voice memo itself and I stretched it and I slowed it by like 50 or 100 times. And then I put it in the background and then it just made these weird and like screaming like it sounded like monsters. I was like, there was demons in that room that night. Like what? I was like listening to this with headphones on, just being like, I don't even know how it's possible that this is what came of that. So the whole thing was just a 72-hour. I basically slept, ate, breathed this movie for 3 days and then it was over.
wow. Wow. That's amazing because everything you just described, the experience of making it comes across 100%. Um, that was the thing that was really just so captivating is that it's an experience, right? Watching it is an experience. And I think going back to what you said earlier about having a feeling, wanting to translate that to an audience, I don't see I don't know how you could do it better with that experience and translating it in that way because yeah, it really shocked me in a really really impactful way. Uh, yeah, I've never seen anything like it. Like I really that was another thing. It was like, what am I watching? Because I've never seen this. I don't have any frame of reference. Like I can't compare it to anything. This is its own thing, and the simplicity of it. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of like gushing about this thing, but it was just really good, and it's clear that it's very personal. It's very raw. It's just unedited emotion. You know, like metaphorically, but and just I don't know, just we talk about like any artist or any musician or any performer of any sort, putting themselves out there, like as a thing. And yeah, like this is putting yourself out there. Like I have nothing to fear after this, right? Because like this is anything I would do is it was just so maybe removed from myself. Well, a lot more. Like I've never done anything quite like this, or if I have, shown it to anybody. Like so, I guess the bravery, the confidence. Maybe I don't know. How was it I'm curious, how was it to hit like upload on that? Like what was that moment like for you?
I mean, I have another one coming out that's even more revealing of myself. And
Mm.
I don't think when I pressed upload that I felt anything other than just a sense of completion. And I think you can tell from the way that we've talked about my process as well, is just like, I love making stuff and I love making something and letting it be what it is and then moving on and making something else. That's really
Mm.
my kind of philosophy as an artist, is about
Mm.
volume and consistency and kind of inspiration. So I think I felt nothing other than, okay, yes, that happened. It's almost like, yeah, just any experience in your life where maybe you're looking forward to something for a long time and then it happens and then you're like, okay, now I have to let that thing go. Or, something traumatic happens to you and it's not as easy as that. It's not as easy when something traumatic happens to you to just let it go. To be able to take something that was extremely traumatic to me and put it into a medium where I could press a button and say, this is the end of that, is
Mm.
actually wild to me. So in that way, it was, almost a healing moment of completion.
Totally. I can totally see that. It's a taking that thing out of yourself where it's been not just sharing it, because that would imply that it's still there, but like removing it, maybe. I don't know if that's too strong of a verb, but taking it out of you and putting it out there. Yeah, I can totally see that. But yeah, that I can't speak highly enough of that project. Now I'm very curious about what you're talking about, what you're doing next, because I'm on board. I need to see it.
Awesome. I'll send you a private screener. It's done.
Nice. Yes. Thank you. All right. I guess, speaking of future projects, where are you headed? Like what's the goal? What are your plans?
Yeah, I've been kind of obsessed with doing a feature film, and I've been in development on some feature films for a while, for a couple years. And I always had a bit of, and maybe I don't know if this is relatable for other filmmakers who are in this process, in this stage in their career, but I've had definitely some frustrations with that development process and some resentments over, like, I'm just ready to go now. I'm so used to just kind of being like, I have an idea, let's do it, make it real, let's go, let's move on. And I actually just said to one of my collaborators, Alana Schwartz, last night, because we're doing this proof of concept for a feature on Wednesday, which she wrote and I'm directing, and we're starting to apply for some funding for. And we've been in development for about 8 or 9 months on that project together. And she wrote the script for about, I think, a year and a half before that. And I just said to her yesterday, I think this is the first and maybe the only time I'll ever say, like, I'm very glad that the development is taking as long as it's taking, because we came to some really cool revelations on the phone yesterday about certain elements of the visuals. Me and the cinematographer, Paul Duck, have been talking this week about the visuals as well, and just getting some references on Shot Deck ahead of this proof of concept shoot. And so I'm actually grateful for this development taking a while, because it allows you to shape the vision, be able to communicate that vision more and more the longer you work on it, and just bring in stronger collaborators. But yeah, the dream is feature films, directing feature films, eventually directing the feature films that I've written. But the feature films that I've written are more $10 million movies. There's one feature I wrote that's like, okay, maybe this could be done for 1.5 million, maybe like on a bare bones, like, okay, it could, like, that one could maybe be scaled down. But a lot of the stuff I write is very like heightened and almost like magic realism and violent, and to be done properly, like, just needs bigger budget. So I think, yeah, the ultimate dream is directing the stuff that I've written over the last 10 years, but it's just really, it's expensive stuff.
Interesting. Writing, there's another conundrum there for you, because you want to be able to do it, but you want to do the stories you want to do. And if those stories require more than you can do, then yeah, you've gotta wait. Otherwise, you'd have to compromise one or the other, and it's tough.
Yeah. And, it is really hard to just come out of the gate and be like, I'm a new guy, I've never directed a feature. Here's this wild feature with all this unfathomable stuff happening in it. Believe in me, believe that people will get it. Like,
Yeah.
You know, I do think I need to like build up some more, for lack of a better term, clout in order to have
Sure.
people see that vision.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. And I understand the patience issue, like you're describing, like trying to trying to trying to wait is very difficult when you've got an idea, when you really want to get it done. But as you probably know, everything you're doing, all the shorts are are leading towards that, are building you up as a filmmaker towards that, evidence to your future financiers that you have a vision, that this is what this is what I do, this is what I like. So everything, you're headed in the right direction. You're doing everything right. It's just a matter of time. Just remember that. Okay, so the proof of concept, the one your friend wrote, that's a short. That's another short.
This is a feature, but we're doing a proof of concept. Just we need a pitch video for the application to Telefilm's Talent to Watch program, which is Telefilm's kind of the major federal film funder in Canada. And they have a program every year called Talent to Watch. And it's like around $250,000 that you don't have to pay back for specifically your first feature. The director has to have never done a feature. The producer has to never have done a feature. So we are applying for that this spring, applying for some other funding as well, but they have a pitch video component that we really wanted. It has 1 minute of the director's previous work in it, and we really wanted to do something that evoked the actual film itself. So we decided, let's get the core team out and shoot something in my basement and my garage and get something together this week. So yeah, that's a proof of concept for a feature, which I'm really looking forward to.
Okay, so you're closer to a feature than you thought. It's just maybe not the one, like you're saying, the stuff you want to write and direct, but at least that you'll have, maybe fingers crossed for you, that this one will go through, because that's another major milestone that will help ensure you get to do your project later, is to have a feature under your belt. So
Yeah. And Alana's written just a wonderful feature, and, the collaboration, the producer, Katie Billow, and then the cinematographer, Paul Duck, the four of us really coming together on the vision. It's been a very strong process so far, and I have a very clear vision for it. So that's always my thing as a director. I used to be like, could I direct other people's scripts? And then I kind of realized over time, I'm attached to direct another feature that I didn't write when that eventually gets funded. And over time, I came to realize, oh, there are other people's work that I can pick up a script, read it, and start to have a vision for. And then as the development process goes along, really solidify that. And that's actually extremely exciting in itself. So Alana's written a wonderful script, and I am excited. I do feel very optimistic that we're going to get to do it within the next year or two.
yeah, that's interesting, because you, and what I've seen of the films you've done, and I guess you have worked, I guess the childhood one was with your friend, but the Return to Nature was all you, right? Yeah, you have such a strong kind of presence that it would seem difficult maybe to join minds with someone at such a fundamental level. Like, it's one thing to work with a DP and here and there, like, or an editor, but a writer is that's at the foundation of this whole project. Yeah, I mean, you kind of already explained what it's like to kind of just feel it out, like whether or not you could do that. It doesn't sound like it was too difficult, right?
Yeah, I think that you're exactly right about the joining minds. I think that's what makes a difference with this feature with Alana, and then Welwitchia, which is the feature I'm in development with the writer Zach Latino. Those two people are two of my best friends. And, Cam, who from Ouch My Childhood, is also, we've been friends for over 20 years. I talk to these people almost every single day.
Mm.
So that's the level of relationship that it seems I need to have to direct
Right.
their scripts. Who knows? Like, well, one day if it would be more, wow, this hotshot writer came out of nowhere. Well, but like, these people are, yeah, some of the closest people in my life. So
Mm-hmm. Is that a challenge? Because I know filmmakers just starting out and they don't have a network per se. They're kind of reliant on the people they know. Are these filmmakers? Clearly, they're filmmakers, but did you and I guess you grew up with that one guy, Cam. But what's it like working with people when it comes to a difficult, like, two ideas that don't immediately match up, and how do you balance a friendship versus a collaboration?
It's a great question because not just with writers, but in every aspect, I'm very close with many of the people I work with. And I think it goes back a little bit to letting people do their jobs and letting people bring their creativity to the situation. I think the fact that you're in different roles makes it a lot easier, where it's like, is this at the end of the day fundamentally a directorial decision? Is it a
Mm,
decision of the writer? Is
mm,
it a decision of the editor that's not going to make me as a director like it any less? Or, hey, even if I like it maybe 5% less, if that's really what they think and this is their job, that I will cede to that. Like, I'm never going to be the kind of guy with actors too. I'm not going to make you do it 30 times for it to be 3% better. It's just not my way. I would rather everybody have a good experience. I would rather us love each other. I'm very much about human connection and taking care of people's mental and physical well-being. And I think the art can be very, very high level without having to be extremely controlling or
yeah.
disagreeable about things. I think it's going to be a negotiation sometimes, but the rules are pretty clear.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. It's at the end of the day, it's a movie, right? It's I guess, the mo- the film as a collaborative medium. If you're an fine artist, you're a painter. You can spend all the time you want. You can argue with yourself. There's no limit to how much time you can spend, how much creative energy, whatever. But film is not like that. You have other people, you have time constraints, you have a budget constraint. You're always kind of making those just like game time decisions. Like, okay, this isn't working. We have to move on. We have to do something else, and that part of it is very difficult for, I think, for everybody, because there's no stopping that. And especially as a director, you're in charge. You're the one really most of the time making those decisions. So it's a lot of pressure. And in working with people, it's good in one sense because there's a shorthand. You're familiar with them. Like you feel like you can be honest, but you also have to make them feel like they're invested, that they're contributing, and they're not just there for you, that they're there for themselves, helping you, or you're helping each other. It's tough. That's a real tough balancing act that you have to do at all times. Every minute of every shoot day is a balancing act. There was something else that I wanted to ask you about. I lost it. Dang it.
Take your time. Really take your time. Or if it helps to refresh and go and talk about what we talked about, like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's all right. I'll think of it later. Okay. Anyways, Cassidy, thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you. I'm very excited for you and what you're doing, and I want to see what you're doing next. Congrats on everything you've done so far, and good luck on everything coming up. Really hope that you get that grant for this feature you're planning. We're gonna put up links to everything, if or whatever you want it to share. We're gonna have links in the description, so all the films that we're talking about you can watch um, through that. But thank you again. Welcome to the Second Look family, and we'll see you down the road.
thank you so much, Bren. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you and for believing in me. And it was just amazing chatting with you.
Yeah, same. All right, take care.
Take care. Bye bye.